Hi, I'm Alice Leung with Brick and Mortar Ventures, and I'm the team lead for financial performance. What we want to get out of this workshop today is really understanding
how might we reduce the time and effort required to produce and submit an ad hoc work in progress statement in ways to eliminate redundant work between sending, reviewing, and receiving stakeholders so that the time to produce a just-in-time WIP is a reflection of the contractor's financial performance. So we actually started by looking at what goes in the WIP report. So we almost did like start in the middle, then almost did like a pull plan of all the data that you need. And then from the WIP report, kind of where does that go? So we went into a bunch of detail on like, data in, data out, who's touching all the data, who's like manipulating the data, reviewing the data, and all of that stuff. So I strive to be a great leader, and great leaders are really good at delegating to smarter people. So I'm actually going to have Devon come up here and present the board.
Okay, my name is Devon Dorrity. I'm with HH2 Cloud Services. I'm the Chief Technical Officer there. So I just want to be clear, we actually had a very collaborative team over there, so we all got all the different stakeholders represented and giving their key pieces of information. But basically, we start off with the ERP up here at the top. And the ERP starts off by getting kind of all the upstream revenue side of things set up, with your contracts. Either if you're a tradesperson, I think a lot of this is from a trade person, so it'd be their contract with their GC or whatever, and then any downstream contracts with suppliers or subcontractors, all set up in the ERP. And then, of course, once you get all that going, then it starts collecting costs and payments are received and all of that, and all of that gets accumulated in the ERP. So to go with the process of WIP, first we have on a regular basis, our PM is going in and we're getting job-to-date costs, and we're taking time to analyze PCOs, potential change orders that are being held, and then of course those contract values are being updated as PCOs are approved. And then at some point we get to Excel, and once you get to the we take the data out of the ERP. It typically goes into Excel, and we're starting to look at some of the more complicated pieces. So like we're looking at forecasting and estimating the cost to complete. And that's where things get really dicey and rough, because everyone has a different business, and there's maybe proprietary ways of trying to figure out all the different inputs that can cause problems. So this is kind of a pain point. Figuring out actually how far the project is. You can use unit production, your percent of your budget, work complete. If on pay apps for subs, you get work completed, materials stored. And then you might be far along in a job, and you might have, that there's going to be a lot of overtime to get completed on time. So there's a lot of variables that go into figuring out your estimated cost to complete. And then you have to decide if you have potential change orders that are currently in process, whether or not to include them, and that kind of thing. So that creates one of the bigger challenges in the whole process. Once that happens, though, we do get a sample WIP created, and there's a WIP review meeting where we pull in various stakeholders in to review that. And then finally we end up with an executive review, usually by the CFO of the company. And then the controller then takes it, and any changes that have to go back to the ERP are then inputted. And then a packet basically is produced that includes financials plus the WIP report, and then that packet is distributed typically on a quarterly basis to the surety agent, and then from there, and that's usually done in like an email format and PDF. You're just sending PDFs over email, and then it goes to, from there, typically in the same format, goes to the actual underwriting, the surety company, and so they're looking at that. And then also down here on the quarterly as well, typically we're seeing this go to your banks and your CPA with the WIP reports, and then finally a subset of those documents also goes down to the GC in the form of the pre-qualification letter. So that's the process that we documented that kind of represents the status quo. Our biggest pain point is the whole concept of calculating that cost to complete, but also we do have situations where the ERP and the project management system might not be the same system. They could be two separate systems, and so making sure those are talking together can be a potential pain point. And then also we've got a manual Excel process here, which could potentially be fraught with some issues, and then you've got the whole email PDF, and especially at the very end of the process, you've got to be able to key data in, and the PDF is a really good way of documenting a formatted report, but not so great when trying to just automatically, throw data into another third-party system. So that's it.
First to Team 6. Any questions, clarifications, comments? Yeah, Dennis, that sounded familiar. The more I hear it, I say, oh yeah, I think I understand how that works now.
The key point there is, like Devon said, sometimes all that data can exist and be co-located in the ERP. Many times it's not, and that's where one of the biggest challenges is getting it all together in one spot so we can create a binary file of some sort for consumption down the road.
As you go into the root cause stuff, I think like some of that Excel stuff internally, most of that's kind of keeping house in order. Versus, I'm very curious in that with the surety agent and the surety provider, that sort of email and how much we can use that as a pull to pull some opportunities from there. So cool. Go.
Oh, there was also a pain point that we actually didn't overcome, which relates to the security. I mean, you got the contractors basically providing their financials over platforms that are not secure. So you want to reach or you want to satisfy the level of transparency needed, but they're accepting a lot of risk and there's not a lot of security there.
And the difference between security and privacy, right? Because security is that from an IT standpoint. Privacy is just, do I want to share it or not? And that comes back to contracts and everything. Yeah, we've been talking about.
Yeah, we definitely identified a challenge that a lot of times, especially the trade contractors, you really don't want to be sharing upstream, their profitability and that kind of thing. They want to keep that under wraps.
I was just curious about you talked about the difficulties calculating cost to complete. I was curious if you guys discussed that in detail. What were some of the different methodologies that people brought up?
We did discuss it, not in a lot of detail. Interesting enough, one of the members of our team is a trades contractor that does drywall, and he actually has a pretty interesting system. Do you want to just describe that for a second? Because I think that might be it's really cool. It's already on.
For production tracking of drywall framing, even taping finishing, we implemented Struction Sight, which is a wearable camera system. And it has the potential with BIM input and everything else, as you walk around the jobs and the different office spaces or rooms, it tracks footage of the walls you have in place, amount of sheetrock up, amount of finishing, depending on level of finish that is in place. And it goes back to your job cost by cost items and can tell you the percent complete. Each week we walk the job and compares it to the budget and tells you where you're at in the job.
So I think depending on the trade that you're dealing with, you might have different proprietary methods of trying to keep track of unit production and where you're at in the project so that you can tell whether you're over or under budget based on cost to date on the job.
Sorry, I was just gonna. Are you providing that data, like the completion percentages, to the GC when you're submitting your pay app?
No.
Okay.
One word, no.
A follow-up question: Are those drywall workers? Are they union?
Yes, we are.
Oh, and did you have to bargain that?
We asked permission first, and actually they were
Okay, thank you.
allow us to do it. So yeah.
I just had a comment on you made about trade contractor profitability. Why is it something that we can't talk about? Why is that proprietary? Why shouldn't we accept that trade contractors should be profitable?
Let's aim that with Shane.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we got 90 minutes for that this afternoon.
Right. But I mean, if we're sharing that clearly, I mean, everybody should understand we're all in this for profit. So we should have that. That shouldn't be something that's hidden as an industry.
Well, it goes to the bonding and the surety agents and all that kind of stuff with quite a bit of transparency, but the tradesmen don't necessarily want GCs knowing how much profit's built into the job. That could affect their future bids and things like that. I mean, there's issues there.
I heard it over here too. Somebody behind me said it. It's the amount of risk that's been pushed down to the trade Yeah, the amount of risk that's been pushed down to the trade. If I'm a trade, I feel the same way about that.
All right. So that came from, and I'm going to out her, that came from the reason it's not shared is because GCs are at like 3.5%. And in some respects, the trades are at 12%. And I said, well, yeah, or higher, but it's a volume. Or more. And I will tell you that that's because they're taking on the risk, and follow the risk, follow the money.
Correct.
Yeah, the trade contractors are basically cash flowing the jobs, right? So there's a lot of risk there.
Well, and financing it as well. So that's a totally different story.
Gets shared. I'm with the trade saying, why would I share my profit margin? Because you're going to just try to squeeze it.
Yes.
But I have all the risk. There's nowhere else for me to put it.
Not that we're getting into
I can't wait to see who's going to solve that problem.
Do I hear? It's back. They do all seem to overlap.
Yes, this will be a recurring theme, I promise.
So over the course of these 2 days, we want to take what we're understanding from the current process and figure out, whether through integrations, new technologies, or more collaborative methods, how to change that into a more efficient process.
I just want to point out our new tagline that came from Todd. Is your whip whipping you? And then I'll pass it on to Devon. As I was delegating yesterday, delegating again.
You want to do the objectives real quick?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Team objectives. So we didn't really do much of a change. So how might we reduce the time and effort required to produce, analyze, and submit? So we added the analyze, the work in progress statement, in ways that eliminate redundant work between sending, reviewing, and receiving stakeholders, so that the time to produce and analyze, we added the analyze. The WIP is a reflection of the contractor's financial performance. With that, I'll give you Devon.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so as before, the process starts with the ERP. That's where your initial project is set up. We get our contracts set up. Our owner contract, well, depending on where you're at in the process. If you're a trade contractor, you get your contract with the GC, any sort of subs, contracts set up, also purchase orders and the like, and budgets if you're for your trade work. So you get all that set up there, and then for this purpose, we're assuming that either the ERP has change management built in, or there's another system that would integrate in with the ERP to inform the ERP of your change orders that are taking place throughout the process of the job. So what we did to change it from the previous system was there was an Excel section where you just managed everything in Excel to create your WIP, and you started off with all the information from your accounting system, pulling it and analyzed it for the WIP. But what we changed that to instead was that we would start involving proprietary progress measurement tools. Every trade kind of measures things differently. There are some people, as we discussed, have some AI helmets that kind of analyze square footage of drywall that's hung. So every industry or trade might have their own way of measuring performance or productivity or progress. And then that would go into a dedicated forecast tool. There are forecast tools that exist today, and also some ERPs are going in the direction of adding those as well. So that data is going to be flowing seamlessly. And then finally, the work in progress tool. We believe that work in progress tools likely will be provided by the ERP. And so the data would flow into there. After all that's done, there's a work in progress meeting that will occur with executives. And then any sort of over/under billings will produce transactions that flow to the GL. Afterwards, balance sheets and P&L flow, and then the work in progress flows up into a combined packet that is then sent to the surety agents. And then on that packet will include PDF and the XBRL format for data interchange. And in the future, we see this happening automatically through the use of APIs into the different systems that the surety agents or surety companies will be using. And then this same packet will also be sent to the CPAs and banks, and then these folks will then produce audited financials that will be pushed back up to the surety agent. And then, of course, the GC is sent a pre-qual letter. Now, one thing we also came up with is the CPAs will actually do audited financials back to the surety agent and then goes to the surety company. And then the last process we documented was that the surety companies will oftentimes give feedback and analysis for bonding purposes, and that kind of bounces through the surety agent and back to the CFO and to be reviewed by the by the contractor. So the benefits are that we're replacing Excel with progress measurement tool, forecasting tool, work in progress tools. We also added integration points for automatic data interchange across the entire process. And then we're also planning, this banks on the idea that from the ERP and all of this forward, it's all going to adopt XBRL, which is already a standard. We just need adoption of that standard. And then the last thing is there's potential in the surety area for increased surety capacity and responsiveness. So that's our benefits from the process.
All right, questions for Devon or the rest of Team 6?
So in the engagement with the projects, the operation side of all this, did you guys consider the model as an input tool, like a fully built out model, so call it 4D, 5D, whatever we'd like to call it, for like that change order record or the work in progress? Did you guys consider the model as that tool?
I think the way we approached this was that every trade, because we're doing this from a perspective of a trade contractor, so every trade is going to have their own proprietary methodology for gathering production data and how far they are in that progress. And they're also going to have their own models of doing forecasting. So we did talk about this. I did put in here that forecasting, we consider that to be a bit of a rabbit hole. And the reason why is just because everybody is going to approach that a little bit differently. However, we do think that people could build forecasting in a way that solves a lot of people's problems, and then they can do as little customization as they need.
All right. Round of applause. Awesome. Thank you
Round
very
of applause.
much.
Today, there's quite a long process that's managed in Excel. And even though Excel is a great tool for financial people, we feel that we can drastically improve the process by using purpose-built tools for that, specifically a forecasting tool and a WIP tool that are integrated together. And so that was probably our biggest finding that we believe would save the most time. We also determined that we could save time by using purpose-built, proprietary progress reporting tools so that we could gather unit production data and productivity data from the field. And if you can get all of those flowing, it would drastically reduce time. And then on the other side, we also found that if we can get the industry to adopt the XBRL format for interchanging these documents, this is a standard that already exists, and if we can just get the various software manufacturers to adopt that standard, it'll help us build tools that will automate and streamline the process of transmitting data from the contractor to the surety agents, CPAs, and bonding agents.